Hello, everybody. I'm Meso.
And I'm LJ.
And streaming to you from a golden beach, this is Knack and Jay. Guess who's Knack?
And who's
again.
Jay? Oh, wait.
That's very much how that goes. Aw, yeah. How's it going, dude? How you doing?
I want to go home.
You are home.
Oh.
Quarantine is still going.
I don't want to be here then.
Listen, this is important.
Is
This is important.
Is it really?
It is a product of our own design.
Oh.
We didn't have to do these next. We could have done Lariska.
I mean, honestly,
something simple.
probably should have in retrospect, but we were just so excited.
Agree.
We were so excited by the prospect of, getting to important characters that haven't had visuals for so long. Oops.
I mean, I think it's because people care more about the Hagah than they do about Lariska, or people like her, but they're intrinsically harder to do. But we're gonna get into all that.
Yeah, we will.
But hello, thank you guys. People are filtering in right now. Hope you're all doing well. On this fine Wednesday afternoon. Hope it's not too late for you guys. Hope you're all staying safe. This is going to be one of those episodes about the canon contests. If you're not familiar, we're going to give you a brief recap and reminder because it has been a good few months since we last talked about this subject. So we're going to catch everybody up to speed. But before we do any of that, hit us with the plugs.
All right. So if you're interested in joining in the conversation, head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. You need to be 13 years or older and read the rules, and you'll have a good time. Additionally, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/theTTVchannel. Lowest $1 a month, you can join our Patreon Discord server, as well as the Minecraft server on the islands of Matanui and Voyanui. Finally, head on over to Twitter at the TTV Channel. Or rather, is it at the TTV Channel or at the Three Virtues? Still. I actually forget. It's been a while since we've done this.
I think it is the TTV Channel. Yes, it is.
There we go. At the TTV Channel, and then at Messinac and at the Eljay Johnson, JOHNSEN. Okay. Let's do this.
Okay. So welcome everybody back to another round of fun canon contest talks. Before anybody asks, no, there's not a contest currently up and running. There is no entry period. There is no voting period. What there is a feedback period. The purpose of this episode is going to be announcing the next contest, which, like we already said, is the Toa Hagah. We're going to be talking about our plans for the Hagah, some of the stuff we've discussed in the last few months, what we've been up to in this break period, and some of the feedback that we have garnered from a recent discussion topic posted to the TTV message boards about the Toa Hagah, specifically for the purpose of figuring out what the heck to do with this contest and addressing some of the questions people have had. So we're going to be, number one, giving you guys some basic info. Number two, addressing some questions and interesting points raised on the boards. And number three, doing a probably brief, abridged Q&A segment here, so you guys can ask questions. Probably for the sake of sanctity, just about this topic. And we'll do that at the very end, as usual.
Mm-hmm.
So, in case you're new, which I doubt at this point many people following this haven't followed the other two, but hey, it's always somebody's first, right? The canon contests have been a project that we undertook last year. They are not the first canon contests in the Bionicle community, far from it, but they're the first in many years. Specifically for the purpose of assigning visuals to characters who never got them in the story. Up till this point, the two successful ones have been Helrix, the first Toa, and Artaka. These were characters that appeared in the Bionicle written story, never had sets. Through the canon contest, we were able to create a design that was voted on by the community, present it to Greg, who approved them, and they're now part of the canon. And if you go on BSO1 Wiki, they're there on the pages. The way it works, because of a very convoluted system that we had to adopt because of BSO1's stance on allowing 3D printed pieces.
Doric stance.
Doric stance, yes. A mock contest is held to determine the design of a character, and then a follow-up art contest is done to basically draw artwork of that mock design with a custom mask. That way, if a mock wins the custom mask that was 3D printed, the artwork would be the one featured on the character page front and center, and it would have an original mask, because for some reason that matters. But we're not going to beat that dead horse again too much.
Oh, I'm sure we
There's
will
much to be done.
later.
It'll be mentioned. But
Not now. It's not
really
not the focus of today's episode, but I'm sure it's going to come up again.
Well, it always has a way of coming up because it complicates things from what would otherwise be a relatively simple affair. And you'll see some of that in the ripple effects of what it means for the Hagah. But like I said, up till now, those two contests have been held successfully. Then late last year, we were like, let's take a break. We were kind of burnt out after the Artaka contest. I'm going to be real. It was kind of draining, even though that one went better than Hellrick's by a country mile. It was still kind of draining. And we were like, we have other things going on. It's the holiday season. Let's just try to not be so bogged down with all this stuff. We'll pick it back up in the new year, which is exactly what we did. We took a few months long break.
That was nice.
It was nice. Although I do admit it probably was a few too many months long break from what I initially envisioned.
Could have been longer, actually.
In a post I said we'd be back in January. Which you definitely were not back in January.
January 2022.
And that led to a bunch of people wondering, where the contests were and spamming the comments section of our videos. But
the usual.
It's always fun.
No, it's not. Don't do that. It's annoying.
Rest assured, we always planned to come back to them. They just took a little bit longer than initially envisioned, but we are here now. So, yesterday, posted a topic on the TTV message boards. Toa Hagah official feedback topic. And it's still open. If you want to go chime in, it's basically going to be open for a while. There's no concrete close date. Because the way I'm looking at it, so long as there's problems to solve, the topic will need to be open. When we've solved the problems, we'll close the topic. There's a poll, but it's more of a survey. It's not like a binding, this is what we're going to do kind of a poll. It's more to gauge kind of what people are feeling, and there's some interesting things gleaned from that. Because basically the Hagah are a special case. They're not like the characters we've done prior or the characters we're going to do in the future. They have a very unique set of restrictions. And Eljay, do you want to talk about some of the canonical restrictions placed on the Hagah by Almighty Greg?
Yes, so the Hagah, as far as we know, there are a few things that kind of guide us to their appearance. 1, they are similar in appearance to the ones we are currently aware of, in so that they have Metru-style torsos. 2, they are likely the same color as their Hagah counterparts, so Metru Brown, Black, White, and Metru Blue. 3, none of the remaining 4 have masks which are the same shape as their given power. That means Pooks does not have a mask that looks like a mask of emulation. It looks like something else. 4, they all have spears, and they all have Ratuka launching shields. As far as I know, those are the only ones.
Makes sense. And this is kind of a dumber question, but just to establish for people who might not be as familiar, why are the Hagah special in Bionicle lore? Like, what are they?
So,
just to get that baseline.
The Toa Hagah, the Hagah is not the name of a single team. It is the title of a group of teams. 7 groups of Toa Hagah were known to exist. We are only familiar with one. The whole point of Toa Hagah is that they are groups of elite Toa that served as guards for members of the Brotherhood of Makuta. There was one for Pterodax, Antros, Kirox, Mutran, Spirea, Tridax, and the Makuta of Stelt. We are only familiar with the ones for Pterodax. That's Norik's team.
And those are the ones that we are focusing on.
Exactly. So, 2 of them have gotten sets. The other 4 never did. And we are obviously attempting to actually give them appearances for the first time since their appearance in 2005. So, that's currently where things stand. Excuse me. The Toa Hagah also bear metallic armor that separates them from other Toa. So they do have kind of a special look to them as well. Like Norik has this big bulky silver Metrotorn chest piece, and Iruni has golden armor, which is essentially unheard of for a Toa of air.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's really the struggle, right? Because the other characters that we have done, the other characters they're one and dones. They're special cases in the story. The Hagah are part of a team, 2 of which we do have appearances for. So that creates its own set of wrinkles, because it's not just that Greg has mandated that they look a certain way. It's that they're also part of a team, and even though they do not, technically speaking, canonically belong to the same group, ergo there could potentially be some deviation, or there could be if Greg hadn't mandated that. People do kind of want them to look like part of the same unit. People don't want to have a wildly different appearance standing next to the ones that already have been made. Like, you're not going to want Bamonga to have an Anika build, for instance. I think even if Greg hadn't mandated they all be Metru builds, people would still kind of want some semblance of uniformity, because they're part of a group. So there is that challenge as well, figuring out how to make them work, both within the constraints of their story limitations and also, in a way, the physical limitations. And Greg did rule, I believe it was back in 2007 was when he commented on this, that they have, quote, Metru-styled builds. And I already have seen people in the topic and elsewhere trying to point out potential loopholes for that. Stuff like Metru-styled doesn't mean Metru build. It just means Metru-styled builds. Builds that kind of look like a Metru.
I want to absolutely hone in on the phrasing. The question was, do all the Toa Hagah have the same type of body? Brackets, Metru-styled brackets.
Mm-hmm.
And to that, he simply said, yes.
Yeah. So what that means is the torsos are Metru torsos unequivocally. The limbs, not necessarily.
But more than likely.
Could vary.
Probably.
More than likely. Here's the thing, and here's my cynical approach. LJ might not agree. It's purely me. I don't necessarily think... I think this is one of those instances where we probably put too much thought into this. We put more thought into it than Greg does. I bet if you asked Greg today, he might even potentially give a different answer. Or he might not care as much. We're not going to do that, though, because this is his wording. We're not going to try to poke holes in his wording or get him to go back on something he said, in a prior year. We're not going to try to find loopholes around what he says or try to, because Greg probably didn't put that much thought into it. I think that's unfair. He was asked a perfectly reasonable question, and his answer, what he wants to communicate by that answer is, this set of Hagah look like they belong to the same team. That's what he means. And I think we have to treat that honorably. We have to respect that. I don't think it's right for us or for the community to try to, cheat the system and try to work a way to have them look different. That wasn't his intention. And he might not care. He might go back on it, but like, it's not our goal either. We have to work within the constraints of what he's laid out for the story. So that's what we're gonna do. You know, the Hagah are gonna have Metru styled builds. Now, there's been some discussion on what that means exactly, and we'll get into that. But beforehand, I just want to quickly lay out the content of this topic that I posted, because the issue with the Hagah, there's 3 different paths that they could take. Because here's the thing. A lot of people, obviously, the topic has been up for a day and it has almost 600 posts as of the time of recording. A lot of people do have an issue with the limitations of that build theme. Whether that's, right or wrong, smart or dumb, we'll be discussing, but a lot of people do. So, the question was broached in my long mega post that only 56 people have read, based on how many clicks it has in the topic. I don't know if 56 or more people have posted in the topic, but please, for the love of God, if you're going to post, read my link. I worked a lot on it.
Yeah, so
and it's very comprehensive.
56 people clicking, 149 voters. I saw someone say, "So I'm posting this before I read the document."
Please read the document.
Are you kidding me? That's how you get made fun of. You post something without properly going through everything.
That's how that happens, folks. I don't just write to make myself feel good. I wrote to give people an explanation of why we think the way we do and the benefits of each option. So, let's be real. Here's the options. Option 1, we do exactly what we've done before. We stick to it. We do a mock contest first and an art contest second. And yes, you would have the freedom to enter all 4 Hagah if you want, or you could just enter 1, and yes, there would be polls for each character separately. That's how that would work. Standard way. Exactly the same. Both mock and art. And it would just progress just fine. And I think we could do that. And I think it would work totally well. Here's the problem. As I said, we would have to limit the builds. There would have to be some kind of limitation. I've seen people say, well, Metru-styled build. That should mandate the torso pieces. It should mandate the upper and the lower torso. I've seen some people say it doesn't necessarily have to mandate the exact part usage, so long as it mandates dimensions and proportions, i.e., they look like they're the same grouping, even if the build is made up of different pieces. That's one school of thought. Other people say, no, just mandating the upper Metru torso is enough to qualify it, because some people like using the Vaki waist piece instead of the Metru waist piece. And other people get more specific, and they're like, well, it doesn't just need to be the torso, it also has to be how the arms are attached, because the arms attach via axle, coming out from the Metru gearbox. They attach via axle with the open sockets on the shoulders, which are then covered up by armor. And then they use whatever lower arm pieces you want from there. And all these different things are circulating. No matter what path we choose, except for one, we have to figure out a standard, and we have to agree on a standard. And quite frankly, I don't know if we'll come out the end of this Knack and Jay agreeing on a standard. But we have to at some point before the contest starts, and that's the purpose of the conversation. So please keep weighing in that regard. We've cataloged a lot of your messages, and I appreciate the thought people are giving it. Option 2. People say that's too limiting. People say they don't want to have those constraints. Well, what if we didn't? What if we said, just for this contest, since the builds are so simple, since they're relatively constrained into this theme, why not just make it an art contest? Because they're all kind of the same template. They're all kind of the same general build. They're all Toa. They're all part of the same group. Why not just make it an art contest? That kind of solves the issue, because then mockists don't have to feel so constrained. It just makes a different issue, though, because now mockists are outright excluded. because then they can't participate at all. And people want to participate, obviously, as evidenced by the fact that the art contest is currently in last place in the poll. Mockists still want to participate in some capacity. But that is an option. It would certainly be easier. It would mean we would only have to have one phase. We wouldn't have to have multiple contest phases this time, because we would sidestep the 3D printing conundrum. We'd get these over quickly. We'd probably have some cool designs, and it wouldn't be the first Toa Canon contest that's had art only. Nikila also was art only, and people were able to then spend years reverse engineering her into a mock form and coming up with 3D printed mask designs for her Kanohi. That's totally a thing people could do. Option 3 was Eljay's idea, so Eljay, you can tell us about option 3.
Throw everyone to the wolves. A free-for-all. Literally, just a free-for-all. You have art versus art, mock versus mock, art versus mock, mock versus art. At that point, no holds barred. You no longer focus on, oh, well, this is a better mock than this, or this artwork does a better job at conveying the emotional struggles that Toa Hagah went through. It becomes, what is the best depiction? Now, some criticisms I've heard to this are that, well, it's a little unfair. Do you not feel that it's unfair to try and quantify 2D artwork against a mock? That seems like an uneven playing field. To that I say no. I feel like that's almost a little insulting to mockists. Like, I've seen some spectacular mocks that can go toe-to-toe with art. So, yeah. It's simply a matter of, if you do not have the best, or what people believe to be the best, illustration, adaptation, concept for these characters, then it just doesn't win. So,
yeah, I don't want to appropriate your quote. Forgive me if you don't intend to support this point of view, but Willis12 posted in the patron chat, like about the prior point. Like I said on the topic, we know how they're built, just not how they look. And I feel that quote is kind of applicable for why the free-for-all is appealing personally to me. The designs are going to stay the same. The only things that are really up for consideration is, their color schemes, their mask design, their mask colors, their weapon designs, their armor designs, their arrangement, all that stuff. And that's stuff that could be conveyed art or mock. The medium doesn't really matter, especially if you're going off a template. You can pretty much get the same creative expression out of either art or a mock. And at that point, you're just voting on which one looks cool, not necessarily even about art skill or mocking skill, although those, of course, can come into play. It's more about the design of the character. I almost feel like it's more honest, because what happens when you split the contests is people start to view it as the best designed mock. So obviously the one that uses the most complex building techniques, or the one that's the most intricate, or the one that's the most custom, is deserving of winning. But that's not the point.
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
It's about finding the best representation.
A free-for-all boils us down to what it is. It is no longer simply a matter of mock or art. It is not. The focus gets taken off of the medium in which it is presented and puts entire emphasis on the whole point. They are canon contests. They are designed to discover the representative appearance of these characters. And so Willis says here in the Patreon chat, sure, some mockists can compete with good art, but I think in 98% of cases, good art will beat a good mock. Then I guess that's the better iteration. That's the philosophy of the free-for-all. It's not just about the medium itself. It's about which one best conveys and succeeds in conveying the character, the essence of that character. I mean, obviously it still gets voted upon, make no mistake, but that's how that's determined. If a mock better expresses a character design than art, logically people would vote for it.
Yeah, and I also don't personally believe that art would automatically beat a mock for the sole reason that art only is not automatically beating the other options.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that when it comes to these contests, the mocking community is, I mean, I have no proof of this. I could be completely wrong. I think the mocking community is a bit more present.
Oh, I have no doubt. No, the mocking community is far larger than any other bracket of any LEGO community.
So I would ideally like for people to view them objectively and not care, and vote for them based on the representation, not the medium, in the interest that we do a free for all. But in the hypothetical example that people are biased and people do vote, one or the other, I kind of still think mocking would kind of win because people want designs they can replicate.
Yeah.
So people would probably end up voting for like a mock over a piece of artwork.
Yeah. A couple of comments I want to address in the YouTube chat. The Germinator asks, since the free-for-all focuses on appearance rather than build or art quality, would mocks be allowed to use techniques that have previously been disallowed? I feel like you missed a little bit of my point. It's not that it focuses less on quality. Quality of what? Like, it's not discarding quality. Like, I'm not going to enter a stick figure and be like, oh yeah, so this is Pooks. You still have to put some effort in. Also, no. The rules would remain the same. It's just what is allowed to be entered changes. Yeah. So, additionally, Lightning BW says, yeah, but LJ Logical isn't always the highest of things in these contests. No offense. I hope you're referring to the participants and not us. In which case, I agree.
We've done some dumb stuff, too. Let's be real.
Yeah, dumb stuff with reasons behind it all.
Accurate. Accurate.
We're not permitting another Hosrix to exist. It's not going to happen. And I already see this, like, thick Toa Pooks running around. Stop it now. You can have fun with it. You can enjoy the fun of it. Do not actually try entering that. We're going to come down on that hard.
I've also seen people going like, oh, what could stop people from entering a 20-foot tall Toa Pook? And the answer is us.
Yeah, we will stop that. Do not bother. It will.
We don't like to employ the whole, we'll disqualify stuff, but we will by no means.
Yeah. Also, one last one. Toe of Snow. Did option 3.5 just get added to the document, or did I miss it when I read through the first time? You missed it when you read through the first time. It's been there from word go.
Correct. I haven't vocally said it yet, but it's been in the document.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and address that. So, the one caveat to this free-for-all concept that I've been pushing for months is, in this hypothetical, the free-for-all would have both art and mock allowed. Both art and mock would be voted upon in the same pools. That means the potential exists for a mock to win with a 3D printed piece. Now, per our agreement with BSO1, on account of their ambassador being difficult to work with, they opted... We have to provide artwork that gets voted upon and canonized in lieu of a mock with a 3D printed piece. As such, hypothetically, we would need to run an additional contest after the free-for-all for any mocks that end up winning with 3D printed pieces.
Which I would rather not do.
Which, yeah, it's a little cumbersome. So, here comes 3.5. Meso, I'll let you take it away.
The idea for 3.5, I think Keeney actually had this idea way back when, and we weren't in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the context has changed it a bit to make it a bit viable. So it's all about framing, right? The initial contest would become just like how it is right now. It's to determine the design. The secondary contest in lieu of individual pieces would be a group shot. Now, I don't know yet if it would be a group shot consisting of Norik and Iruni too. I personally think that'd be cool just to have all 6 of them, but primarily the focus would be the 4 winners with their winning designs depicted in the same style. And the purpose of that is twofold. Number 1, it allows us to have an image to put on BSO1. Number 2, it has an image to put under Toa Hagah. And number 3, it allows for the sets to be redrawn, whether they were mocks or art, in the same style. Having a unique but consistent and cohesive look for all of them, which I know people want a lot because people have said that. And it works for the goals of the contest as well. And it prevents having to do like 4 more entry periods with 4 more sets of voting. It keeps things consolidated. Would it be extra work for the artists to draw 4, potentially 6 characters? Yes. Would we make it a longer timeline of entry? Yes, considering that.
Yeah.
So no worries about that. I've seen people asking if that was chosen. I think that that's
be
more than
taken
fair.
care of. Yeah.
So that's kind of how it would work, those 3 options. We can't really do free-for-all without that. So they're kind of a package deal. I only broke it up for reading purposes. Blind Takadox sent a super chat that he was apparently charged for, but it didn't show up. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and just read it. He sent it to me. He says, I think the thing that makes the Metro build unique is what should be considered for the definition. In my opinion, this is the torso construction. And that's
generally
definitely fair. That is, generally speaking, I would say the most important part. I don't personally, my opinion, I don't think the limbs matter as much within reason. Now, if they wanted to make the Hagah use like the super thick Inika legs with the knee pads, I might raise objection because that looks odd, but there's nothing saying that's wrong per se. They could use the thick Inika legs. I don't know. Generally speaking, the limbs. Generally speaking, I think the limbs could be interchangeable or outright custom built, so long as they're not overly greebly and look in place with G1 aesthetic. I don't think they have to attach the same way or whatever, but they might. You know, there is merit, I think, to discussing at the very least the shoulders, which we'll do later, because that has been a point of contention as well. But we'll get to that, don't worry. But thank you. Hopefully we get the super chat. I don't know why it wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
But thank you. So that's basically that. Those are the 3 options. I've used the term bad options. Eljay doesn't agree with that.
Yeah,
I think they're good options. I'll frame it instead as this. Each option has potential drawbacks. And none of them are what I'd consider perfect.
But that's the thing. None of this is what anyone would consider perfect. I feel like that's cutting short the potential and the problem-solving potential of these options.
Sure.
Because all it does, it's like, well, these aren't great, which makes people think, all right, well, let's think of something better. Okay, we've sat on this issue for a long time. We've had people debating this since this started a year ago. March 17th, 2020 is when we started the first topic. Or the first official topic.
We could have waited a week and made 1 year anniversary.
I'm not too worried. Not the poll deciding things, but like the G1 canon contest discussion and questions with the rules and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, your point is evidenced by the fact that nobody in the topic has come up with a better option short of just don't do the Hagah.
Wait, hang on. I'm an idiot. That was April 17th.
March
5th was the G1 canonization poll.
Gotcha.
So, we're over a year now. And I don't think that these are, sure, they might be imperfect, but all of it is imperfect, and I think definitely that these are good options. But I think option 3.5, which is the free-for-all, modifier, that is the best one. And I feel like that is going to be the most reasonable option for this specifically. Every other contest is going to be like standard. It's going to be mock art. So.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I closed out the document with a few requests, and then I also opened it with a few requests. Most of them were ignored by a few people. Most people are doing okay conduct-wise, but I kind of begged people, like, keep it cool, keep it civil, don't be insulting. And within, like, the first page, and within the first hour, we had people, like, breaking the rule filter with the word filter and swearing and being antagonistic and snide. And
children.
Over the course of the day, we had to repeatedly try to dial it back.
Acting like children.
People got warned. It was bad. Like, I don't know what it is about this that... Well, that's not true. I know exactly what it is. Someone used the term, like gatekeeping, and they used it in the context of, like, oh, all the contests are bad, which I disagree with. But I think they were onto something with the gatekeeping thing. It's a bunch of people who are very invested in the mocking community and not so invested in the story, who view the contest part as the most important bit. And the canon is stifling their creations. And it's exactly the same kind of people who didn't want the contests to happen because they didn't want their headcanons to be stamped on, because the story is invalidating the stuff. And then on the exact flip side, you have the canon people who can also be kind of uppity at times, who are very precise and very, 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 like, hone in on every tiny detail. They say creative freedom is bad, and we shouldn't have creative freedom because all it does is mess with the lore. And why are you doing the contests? Because you're just gonna mess with the lore and risk people, like, changing things. And I think both sides can get a little uppity, and both sides hate each other. And so when you put them in this topic with this unique situation with characters that halfway exist and halfway don't, it causes tension and it causes fighting. I think that's what it is, and it's a shame. I wish people could chill out a little bit. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, there's merit to both. What, Elj?
Yeah, no. Okay, go ahead and finish your point. I want to address something in a moment.
There's merit to both, right? Because I said this in the topic. You have to respect the story. I'm all for creative freedom. I get it. I get that approach, and I get being annoyed that you don't have a lot of it. Because, I mean, that's been our goals all along. Why do you think we fought so hard to get 3D printed parts in? Why do you think we fought so hard to get CCBS in? It's because these are modern tools that modern people use to build. You know, we want that to be represented in some form. Otherwise, why even bother? Like, that's what the community is. So I get it, and I'm empathetic. But at the same time, these are canon contests. These aren't, you know, this isn't mask posting or peace out or any of these communities of people that do these contests for building. You know, this isn't the Bio Cup. It isn't any of this. These are canon contests. The goal is to find the best representation of this character in the story. If you don't want to build in accordance to a story, if you don't care about the story, why are you a BIONICLE fan? BIONICLE is... It's all about the story. If you just want endless creative freedom with no limitations, and limitations are the devil, go be a Lego City fan, or Lego Creator fan, or anything that isn't a story.
Just build whatever you want and not worry about it so much. Like, that's the thing that gets me. It's the thing that gets me. It's... You have a bunch of mockers being like, no, don't, all these story restrictions, they hinder me. Do you know how many mock contests are held every year that you can enter without those limitations? You don't need to be in every single one. You really don't. You can skip one. And also, why are you so focused on this one? This one specifically. Why are you fighting so hard to remove restrictions and limitations from the Hagah? You do realize we have... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other contests without these restrictions. 9 that are going to take place over the next 1.5 to 2 years or longer, with the potential of more. You're not going to have a shortage of contests you can enter with limited restrictions. You just really, really want to, I don't know, throw your own hand in it so that you can feel good about what you've made, like it's another contest and it meets all the other standards and definitions of mock contests you're familiar with. Give me a break. Give me a break.
And like it baffles me. First of all, number one in particular, YouTube chat says, "But what if I'm in the middle, Meso?" Yeah, don't get me wrong. I know there's many people who don't fall into the polar extremes. I was mainly referring to the people who were like being rude and fighting with each other, typically because their values directly contrast. Don't worry, I know everybody's not like that. I personally am in the middle. I get both sides and I understand. So don't worry, I'm not saying it's a blanket statement. But it continually baffles me because people were concerned about the headcanons being devalued, but like this isn't about that. If you up until this point had your mocks that you put value on as far as representations of the characters, why does that have to change because the characters have an official representation? Like, you are a Bionicle fan. You are a fan of a story with facts and 10 years worth of Lego sets with official representations of characters. That doesn't take away your mocks. But it's also, you can't change the fact that facts exist.
Yeah.
Like, it is a thing. You are following a theme that differentiates itself from other Lego themes because of that. That is the thing that makes Bionicle unique from like a lot of the other Lego sandbox themes, and especially what made it unique back when it was made. Why is that a bad thing? These rules exist. Greg said that they're Metro styled builds. Okay. Does that mean nothing cool can be done with them? No. We don't know how they look. That doesn't mean nothing can be done. That doesn't mean nothing cool can come of it. That doesn't mean that nothing creative can come of it. And like Eljay said, there's more than enough other contests, both canon and not, that can be entered that will have much more creative freedom. Now I'm done. What did you want to talk about? You mentioned there was something you wanted to address,
so I'm going back to option 3.5. Rodimus Prime in the Patreon chat says, 3.5 is the most imperfect option. Honestly, IMO because of the apples and oranges comparison. It's not fair to art because mocks have appeal for build techniques, and it's not fair to mocks because an art piece can have aesthetic appeal and dynamism. A mock cannot due to how artistic license works. You just explained why it balances out. Like, in being unfair to both, it's fair to both because it's unfair to both. Like, it completely equals out. Like, someone else in the YouTube chat even mentioned... let me see. Let's see if I can find it.
That is the most whack logic, but it works.
The Legend Reborn says, I think the free-for-all is going to be a bit biased to people who have 3D printed parts and masks. That's what I worry about. But see, that also that is a plus to mocks, and it doesn't matter to art, because you don't need to have a 3D printed piece in art. You just draw something. You just make something entirely new. It doesn't matter. It's not a hindrance. Additionally, mocks have a significant appeal. They're physical. They exist. I can make it. Art has the bonus of artistic liberty, but mocks have the bonus of physicality, of realism. It is tangible. Artwork needs interpretation to a certain extent sometimes, but a mock exists. It's there. You can see it. You can potentially even reverse engineer it and get it done. They balance each other out very, very well. They have pros and cons. Neither of them is more or less than the other. That's why I think it's such a good option. Because it takes the focus off of mocks are better than art. Art is better than mocks. And it puts it solely on this mock does pooks way better than this art does. this art does Gaaki way better than this mock does, because it encapsulates what the character should look like. That's what it does. That's why I feel it's it's the best option, because there are so many pros and cons to having art versus mock. It balances out entirely. There is not one singular thing that unequals either option.
Yeah. Like, I am not... Like, I have some reservations about the idea I've had all along. I would, for simplicity's sake, I'm okay with just continuing as we've been doing. The reason why the option of free-for-all appeals to me, though, in spite of my reservations, is, like I said, it's more honest. I feel like with this contest in particular, it sidesteps the issue of the build restrictions, and it sidesteps the issue of, like, all this stuff, because people are going to consistently keep framing it as if the build restrictions are limiting. You know, if we keep it as it is, if we choose to have build restrictions, people are going to complain, they're going to complain, they're going to complain, they're going to keep complaining. If we don't have build restrictions, people are going to complain, people are going to complain, people are going to complain, because the build, people are going to obsess about the build contest. It's not about the build. It's about the character. It's about how they look. It's about how they feel as a team. That's independent of building specifically. That is not a mocking problem. That is a everything problem. It's a medium. Someone pointed out on the boards. I apologize for forgetting who. I think we might address it later. They compared mocks to like sculptures. You know, like for the purpose of this particular situation, that's their role. You know, they're not about super creative build techniques. They're about how the finished product looks. Really, at the end of the day, the medium doesn't matter as much, and the free-for-all has appeal to me in that regard, because I just think if you frame it as such, people are going to be like, what is this? Why is it so weird? And then people are going to eventually, hopefully, get it and be like, oh, this is why. It's because these characters work best like this. I don't know. That's the idea, anyway.
Yeah.
We'll see if we end up going through with it, but that's why that seems like a good idea to me. I think it could work very well.
Yeah. And then one quick comment I want to elaborate on. Toa of Snow in the YouTube chat asked, what can mockists do if they can't mock? And I feel like that's kind of tongue-in-cheek in the sense that, you know, what can they, what can they do if not mock? But also, if you're someone who wants to enter these contests and you don't feel like you're a significantly well-defined builder or experienced builder, but you want to enter. What can mockists do if they can't mock? Their best. You don't need to worry about anything else. That's it.
Yep.
If
he's not referring to it like that, then this is one of the best contests you could enter, because, like, let's be honest, if people aren't super experienced, this is like one of the perfect ones to do, because
exactly,
it's a simple template. Just build off it.
Exactly. We did get a super chat from Cybnaf in the YouTube live chat. $1, no message. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're a legend.
So,
appreciate you.
Yep, that's a scoop. That's why I wholeheartedly believe 3.5. That's the best option. It just balances out so evenly. And
I'm down for 3.5. I'm also down for regular. The only one I don't really want to do is art only.
I don't either.
It would be simplest.
I'm not interested in art only. Art only goes against the entire point of the contests, which is to include as many people as possible. That's why, I mean, we fought so hard with BSO1 to get 3D printed pieces in whatever way that we could, because that's a large and growing portion of the community that we did not want to exclude. Mocking, that would be like preventing sailors from entering a RC boat contest. You know? It's like, but they do the boat stuff. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of that.
I mean, art only could work, but it would honestly, it's more for us than anything else. Like, it's simplest, it's drama-free, it's fastest, and it also screws over the most people in the community. So to me, that's not really a worthy trade. Like at the end of the day, I still do want these to, like the only reason we're bothering to do them is to get a good result. Being so limiting and so restrictive won't get as good of a result, even if it's easier. So it kind of defeats the purpose. Like doing an art contest to me is just one step away from not doing them at all.
Yeah.
Like, so I'd rather not go that nuclear if we could find a good middle ground.
Which I believe that we can. I believe that we have.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the kind of the foundationals and some of the struggles and some of our points of view. What I want to do next is address some comments from the boards.
Yep. And Meso,
So I made a list.
We're going to be mentioning the commenters' names. I believe that's fine, because I should stress, if we do end up doing that, it is not a call-out so much as it is addressing the comment. They're made on the boards. They are public. They are not difficult to find, and they have probably been read by hundreds of people already. So again, it isn't. We're addressing a comment made in public. We are not trying to hunt you down or call you out or put the spotlight on you. So I just want to clarify.
The biggest problem, and I mainly for you, Elj, for this document, I apologize because I didn't really order this in terms of talking points, so I'm probably gonna like jump around a lot, but I'm gonna try to keep it relatively cohesive.
Okay.
The first thing I want to address is Wholesome Gadunka's mock. Ninon Toa of Psionics. If you could go ahead and pull that up.
What's up?
The reason I want to discuss this first is because this mock was actually posted months ago. It's completely independent of this. It's just a mock he made. Like, literally, that's all. And it's a cool mock. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the overly greebly aesthetic and the spray paint, but, like, it's well built. I see lots of cool building techniques. It's neat. That's not really the point is to discuss the mock itself. The reason I want to discuss it is because it's getting brought up by a lot of people in this topic as an example of a mock that, well, is if we go by such and such logic, then this is a Metru build. And so this would have to be allowed. And the reason people are going by this is because, if you can see, it does use the Metru upper torso underneath all the greebling. And that's really about it. It does not use the same limb construction. It also doesn't even use the same hip piece either. It is an entirely custom hip area with waist articulation and the Vaki torso. So right off the bat, contingent on whatever guidelines we agree upon, that's already not a Metru build if we go the strict route. Assuming we were more lax,
Lenient,
I would say there's a very strong chance that this would still not be allowed in. And here's why. We haven't really discussed disqualification criteria yet, so nothing I say is final. But I can imagine that one of the rules we're going to have is that it has to look like it belongs in the G1 aesthetic.
I really
it has
don't
to
want to
look
do that.
like. I think it's necessary.
I really don't like that. It's just, I want to clarify, for the Hagah specifically, or
yes,
contest wide?
Specifically for the Hagah.
Or sorry, contests wide. Okay.
Specifically for the Hagah, because they're part of a pre-existing team with a pre-existing aesthetic.
I'm far more lenient about that. That's fine.
That's all I mean.
I don't want to apply that to anything else, because that's yeah.
Well, there are other characters that don't have to, like Lariska.
Yeah.
We don't even know what species she is. She could look totally different from people, you know? But with the Hagah, people care a lot about making sure they have the same look. And again, I don't mean to bag on Wholesome Gadunka because he didn't make this mock to be a Hagah. This is just a cool mock. But people are using this as an example, so I have to address it. This mock doesn't look like a Hagah in the least.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think this mock would be allowed through, barring, depending on those criteria. And unfortunately, that would have to be something that we subjectively would decide, but I think most people will agree with it. I don't think it would really be that controversial. You look at this with the color blocking and the greebling and the overcomplexity. This you put this next to Noric and Aruni, and they don't not go together. They don't fit at all. And that's fine within reason, but because people are pointing out, well, look at the Mata. Pohatu looks different than the rest of them. Some Toa do have different statures, different stances, and that's fine. Statures and stances are different than aesthetics. I'm fine with having a hunchback to Hagah. I'm fine with having a Hagah that does something interesting with its limb construction. Like maybe he has like wider limbs than longer limbs, etc., etc. I'm not a fan of a Hagah with like 5 different colors on his limbs and all sorts of like greebles and tiny pieces that just looks out of place. There's a point where the line is drawn. And we haven't drawn it yet, but we might in the future. A counterpoint to that, following along this exact same kind of thinking, specifically about this mock, remember the door opener said, why go, not representing to me, just in general, why go nuclear and disqualify it? If this entry was in the polls, I just wouldn't vote for it. I doubt the majority of people would vote it in. And even if they did, the majority of people would have gotten what they wanted. The most people would be happy. Responded to by Kepler's, said, sure, but consider the dreaded here's my Godwin's Law invocation or the equivalent Hoseric's entry. Should a meme vote become canon just because it saw the most votes? The existing canon precedent should shut down extreme entries. And that's basically where I fall. I am all for leaving stuff open to the voters, in theory. And this won't be the last time we discuss that, because there's a few good points that get brought up later on. But I am, of course, always concerned about the meme outlier. But I'm also just concerned, like, the logic of, even if it did win, the majority of people would have gotten what they wanted, the most people would be happy. That's not the goal, necessarily. The goal is not to make the most people happy. The goal is to make the most people happy within canon limitations. And we run the risk of one stepping on the other, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. At the end of the day, that has to come first, is making sure they adhere to the guidelines, the theme. What do you think, El? Do you generally agree?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There's some other points. There are different points that I want to address more so than this one.
that's fair.
So,
I think one that kind of branches off of this, still talking about Ninan, but more generally, Toa Skello made a post about color blocking. And he says, this is an idea you proposed. I think enforcing similar color blocking would cut down on excessive greebling, or at least negate it as a concern. Noric and Aruni have large blocks of color, as they're made of larger pieces. If similar color blocking was enforced, greebles would either have to be removed or made to be the same color, in which case they could be imagined to be a single part, and therefore wouldn't clash as much with the other Hagah. It's not a concrete rule, unfortunately, but it's at least as clear as the rules for the Artaka contest were, I think. What do you think about that idea?
I don't think it's terribly unreasonable. Both of the Hagah are consistent in their color placement, at which point we only really need to mandate 2 things. 1, the placement of metallic pieces, and 2, the placement of the black hands and black ankles.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's all that we technically need to do for color blocking. And I think that's reasonable. I definitely think it's far more achievable than a suggestion I just saw. And this is from Connor in the Patreon chat. Have you guys considered a part count limit? We have in the past. It's been suggested to us for previous contests. The one thing that makes me go, nah, is the fact that we would need to somehow enforce that. And I'm not really interested in saying, hey, you need to provide a part count or stick to a part count. Also prove to us that you stuck to that part count. Like, that puts a lot on the mockists or what have you. It just,
what it would essentially require is complete disassembly and reassembly.
yeah, and evidence of that, and then we would have to go and count it. It's logistically infeasible.
It'd be much easier to do on digital builds because they have like a part count readout.
Yeah,
but that could also just be easily like fabricated. But if they provide the model file, I guess we could verify.
Yeah,
it'd be a big advantage for them, but not physical builds. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah, so yeah,
it's a good idea though. I appreciate the feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So here was a post from Pylon Madness, who he's of the opinion that I think he's of the opinion that all the attempts for compromise aren't really going to work. And here's his reply. He says, "There's no room for compromise. Either make it extremely strict so that it looks exactly like the two Toa Hagahs we got with different colors, or make it completely free to build with no restrictions at all. Restricting the contest so that it has to have a Metru torso or a certain part does nothing. Ninon has a Metru torso and she doesn't look anything like a Toa Metru. Yet if we follow that line of logic, she's a Metru build and would be totally acceptable entry for a Hagah contest. Just slap on a shield and spear and you've got an entry. I'm not arguing for either side. I'm saying for a contest like this, you need to choose complete restriction or complete freedom. There's no in between." Generally speaking, I do not agree.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't necessarily agree with that.
I get why you say that. If you listen to this, I get why. And it's because up till now, like I said, we haven't finalized a rule list. We haven't even really started work on a rule list. We're trying to tackle these big picture issues first. But that's one of the things, like I said, if we put in additional rules about color blocking, for instance, if we put in additional rules about greebling, if we put in additional rules about G1, accuracy, or like was pointed out in the chat, just simplify it and say look like Nordic and Aruni generally. There's a bunch of different ways we could word it to avoid situations where people try to bend the rules, basically. I agree that having the Metru build, by itself could still lend to some problems. I don't think that's the only rule we should have. I would also point out that Ninon, it only has half of the Metru torso. The entire lower half is custom. So really, all that really amounts to is one piece inside of a shell of other pieces. 99% of the mock is not a Metru build. Only one piece is. So because of that, I don't think that's necessarily evidence for why the system can't work. But I get the point of the post is to say, if you try to please everybody, you're just going to run in circles chasing loopholes that you can't solve. I certainly feel that because that's kind of what we did for Helrix and Artaka. Every time we tried to come up with a solution, someone would find some annoying workaround or some half measure that was an edge case, and we would constantly have to deal with that, and that was aggravating. But that's just kind of the nature of the beast, in my opinion.
Yeah. Real fast. We did get a super chat from 26K down the drain. Gave $10. Drain the down K 620 from chat super $10.
What an absolute legend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for all that you do. You're a wonderful person. So here, I think this is a good thing to bring up. Bring up the Metru build collage.
Ah, yes. I really like this picture.
It was posted by iBunny. That's not to say that iBunny made all these mocks, but it's posted by iBunny.
All right, it's up.
Purpose of this picture is to show all the cool stuff you can do with Metru builds. Now, I don't want to say that every one of these would be allowed per our rule set, because quite frankly, it wouldn't necessarily be. Already, you can point out that some of their arms attach differently. We haven't ruled on that yet. Some of them use Technic. We haven't ruled on that yet. But my initial gut reaction is that all the mocks featured here are, at the very least, pretty close to being acceptable. I think it's fair to say that. They're all pretty close, if not outright fine, for what our eventual criteria would be. And every single mock here looks different from each other, despite still using the Metru template. The top three of these, they're individual characters. One of them's Lekon. One of them literally pulls a Pohatu and they flip the Metru build upside down. One of them uses the metallic sand blue. The bottom left is literally like some Hagah builds, and they all look different, and I think those are all Metru builds.
Yeah, I believe so.
Maybe slightly modified, but again, only slightly, if at all. They all look totally different. The Kitorange dude, I mean, all he did was add a Technic beam, which allowed him to attach different torso armor, which completely changed the look of his mock. They're simple things. I would never argue that any of these mocks have revolutionary building styles or anything like that. But they're not supposed to. All these builds are clearly, we like the Metru build. We want to riff on it and do our own thing and add some personality. And every single one of these builds adds some personality and looks different from each other. To me, this one picture is all the evidence you need for mocks being viable, whether it's keeping things as they are or doing a free-for-all or anything like that. But, these are fine. These are cool. I like them.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I entirely agree.
Props to the people who made this. I know you didn't make it for the contest, but props, Thank you for validating.
Mm-hmm.
Past that, this was another post made by Toa Hagah. Toa Hagah's essentially, he's talking about the Hagah in relation to each other. He says, I think I said this in the old topic, but I believe the Hagah should be as similar to each other as the Toa Mata are to each other. You've got some that are near identical, Tahu, Liwa, etc. You've got some with different legs, Gali, Onua, some with different arms, etc. They all have very similar color blocking. They use the same torso, but some, Pohatu, Onua to a lesser extent, get creative with it, resulting in different proportions. I've never heard anyone say the Mata didn't look exactly like a cohesive team despite their differences, and yet they're not strictly clone sets. I point out Kodiak's Bamanga that I linked earlier is, I think, roughly the upper limit to how different the Hagah should be able to be from Norik and Aruni. I wouldn't want all Hagah to be that different, but having a couple is fine and wouldn't be detrimental to team consistency. And I think this was one picture that I forgot to give you, but you don't necessarily need to put it up if you don't want to.
I should.
It's essentially an example of what a Hagah could look like. Again, this, I believe, uses the Metru torso. And it's just bulky. He gave the mock Huki and Nika masks, the Sanok, for shoulder armor. But he uses a spear, and he uses a Rotuka shield, and it's pretty standard affair.
There we go. This is it. And this is by who again?
Kodiak.
Thank you.
It's Kodiak's Toa Bamanga. And, Skello's point is this, for him personally, this would kind of be the limit to how different they could look for each other. I don't necessarily agree. I think the mock we just saw, the purple one with the upside down torso, that would be my personal limit, but that's cool that you can have those two spectrums. This I would also consider to be totally fine as an entry, at least right now. Because this checks all the boxes to me. I don't see anything immediately glaring unless we wanted to strictly enforce the shoulder connection. But this looks like it would be fine, mostly. And this is cool. They were able to do this. Plenty of stuff you can do with the Metro build.
Yep, pretty much.
I want to read. Wait, what is that, Bill?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Next up was another one of those posts. Even though I decried them prior, I do think it's fair to give airtime to the opinion. So I wanted to read one from Makuta Luroka, who said, why are we even having this debate just to vote for what you want, or actually forget canon and visualize the characters how you want? It's moronic debates like this, where the fan base is literally arguing over how to build a mock of a character from a dead canon that never got an appearance, that makes me distaste the canon contest from the word go. All of you are gatekeepers and pedants so high off your own farts that you can't even agree to just let people build for the contest. It has to fit within certain guidelines to even be considered for the canon contests. This fan base really frustrates me sometimes. Let people build whatever, and if it displeases your sensibilities for what you believe should be canon, then don't vote for it. Is it really that harmful that someone else gets to have their interpretation of a character be taken seriously? Yes, when it's about a story. Because if you're going to tell me that logic applied to Hellrix, all I would have to say is Hosrix. And that's essentially all I would need to reply to your post with. Like, I gave him a long breakdown, I gave him a fair reply, because it's a fair opinion. I've seen many people have it. But honestly, the only thing you need to say, Hosrix.
Yeah.
Just let people vote for it. Lol. No restrictions, minimal restrictions. It'll be fine, Hosrix. Hosrix almost won, and that's the logic that you're essentially saying. Canon doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Hellrix is a stick figure. Who cares? Just let people have their interpretation. And if people say otherwise, don't vote for it. You need guidelines to keep things within the story. If someone... Another stupid, fringe case people are saying is, what if you build a 20-foot tall Pooks? It's like he's like 5 times as high as the rest of the Toa Hagah. How would that work? And I mean, just ban that. Like, that's totally within our power to do. Just don't let a 20-foot tall Pooks in, because Pooks isn't 20 feet tall, or that would have come up in the story.
Yeah.
Because the story exists.
Like,
it's a thing.
Like, cool that you don't care about the canon. That's fine. Your prerogative. Also, like, we do. Next.
Plenty of people do, cares about the canon contest. Greg, the dude who wrote it.
Yeah, like, okay. If you don't care about canon, that's fine. Keep enjoying mocks. Keep mocking.
It's just like you said earlier. There are so many other contests across so many other sites.
Yeah, like, come
for
on.
people to enter.
What? You just stop trying to peddle your own ego in every single contest. Like, you can skip one or two. Okay?
It's like people actively seek out the 3 so far contests across the dozens, hundreds in the Bionicle community over the years that have nothing to do with canon, just to make a big deal about it.
Right, like, give it a rest. You can miss one of them. Come back for Lariska. Come back for Tuyet. Come back.
And don't get me wrong. If you're one of the people who doesn't care about the canon, that's also fine. You're free to experience Bionicle that way. You don't have to care. You don't have to adhere to it. You don't even have to know it. You don't even have to know what a Hagah is to be like a Bionicle fan, But don't engage with the contest specifically for that purpose and then complain about their worth. Like, I think that's fair, right? It's not outlandish to say.
I think so, yeah. So, no, it's irritating. Like, come on. Just give it a rest. Let it be what it is.
That being said, there were some people who did come in and gave perfectly fine, non-inflammatory posts, just expressing their opinion. One person, popular mockist Balam, posted in the topic, which I was surprised to see.
Same.
And he simply chimed in. He said, "I see no reason to not have a mock contest than an art portion. In my opinion, a mock should be free to use whatever torso and limb builds the builder wants. If it strays too far from looking like a Toa Metru in design, voters can reject it, but I think having the option for custom builds emulating the Metru torso or variations, for example, is important." And that's totally fair opinion to have. It kind of bridges into a popular train of thought, which more or less supports that line of thinking. It's people saying, okay, we can't just have whatever. We can't have no restrictions. But we need some. How do we form a middle ground? And their proposal
Oh my gosh.
What?
No, is this the one? Go ahead.
Well,
Go
their
ahead.
proposal is essentially to have builds made that look like Metru builds, but are not technically. And we've discussed it in the past. This isn't a novel concept. Go ahead and throw up the Vakama
I got
picture.
it. Yeah, it's there.
We've discussed this in the past. This isn't a novel concept. Eljay and I have talked about it behind the scenes. The conceit of people who are able to make custom builds. That the point isn't that they're cookie cutter. The point isn't that they're ridiculously greebly. The point is just that they have creative freedom and they wouldn't look out of place next to a Metru. Now, what do you think about this, Eljay?
What is the point? What point are you trying to prove with this? Like, look at this. You went through all of this time, all of this effort, all of this design work to make something that you can do in 2 pieces. What goal have you accomplished here aside from spending more time on this? Like, I don't get it.
Well,
Like, it's impressive. I mean, good job. What have you accomplished here? You made an already complex looking torso just complex? For what gain? Like, this hasn't done anything.
and this, I believe this mock was made by community member Dag, just to give credit where credit is due.
Don't get me wrong. It's very well done. It also doesn't help the situation. Like, I can just do what he did with a Metru torso.
Well, I think because I also don't fully get it, but then again, I'm not a mockist, so I can't put my head space where these people are at. I think the goal is it's less about proving, one thing's better than the other. It's just more about, to them, it's more interesting to build something that is custom, that does take, skill or techniques or anything like that, that does not just rely on doing it the way Lego did, because that's part of the creativity angle. And I will admit, if I blur my eyes, that totally does just look like Vakama Metru, so it is totally achievable. The best comparison I could put to maybe make us understand why it's appealing is on our BIONICLE episodes. We were discussing the concept of mixel jointed brick built figures in a construction style. And I think Sakota privately made a comment to one of us about it after the fact that was like, why would I want these as an example when I could just have BIONICLE's parts? These are just the same thing, but more complex with more pieces.
Yeah, and of course, there is the practical response to that being, they don't exist anymore. But
true.
We have full access to these currently.
Yeah.
It's
but I think the same principle appeals. It's about building something that looks like something else out of a different style, is essentially what this is. Again, I don't fully get it either, but I think that's kind of what the train of thought is. It's about if you give people the creativity to do whatever they want, who knows how many things you could see like this with different constructions. And in reality, it's almost less about what gets presented than the spirit of the contest, having options rather than having restrictions. And I agree with it somewhat. My only problem is not every case is going to be this cut and dry. Like, yes, if I look at this mock right now, if someone entered this, say for in a second we have no rules, I wouldn't disqualify this. I would think this would look fine. If someone made this build but made it a Hagah, yeah, I think that could totally stand next to Noric and Aruni and it wouldn't look out of place.
Yeah, sure.
Could I say the same about the next 20 custom builds that would be entered? Or would I have to disqualify like 18 mocks because they didn't do it as good as this person did?
Yeah. I just feel like this is wholly unnecessary. It just, I don't know. Is it impressive? Absolutely. Is it well executed? No doubt. Is it kind of, like, this is a very rude thing to say, I admit, and I apologize. Is it kind of pointless? Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. As MC Lego Boy in the YouTube chat said, I think the goal is just to show it is possible for people that wouldn't have the Metro torsos. To which he then followed up, although to be honest, those that don't have the torso parts would need significantly more parts to achieve the same goal, which is just inefficient. Which, yeah, that's correct. Also, who doesn't have a Metro torso? Who can't get a Metro torso but is actively mocking?
I have like 3, but again, I have like 3.
You have like
0.
3. You know how many Hagah you could potentially enter depending on the colors? 3 out of 4.
That's true.
It just, I don't know. I
agree.
This to me is not a solution on any reasonable grounds.
Yeah. So we're reaching the end. I only have a few more to mention. One I want to mention from Kepler's. Been a very active person in the topic, very constructive. I thank you for doing what you do. Did make a point I don't know if I fully agree with, because I was having a discussion in the topic, and one of the things I said, I replied to a member named the Germinator, and I was like, the only thing that leaps to my mind is putting in the stipulation that they have to be a similar aesthetic to Iruni and Noric, but ideally I would like for that to be more specific and less broad. But figuring out how to exactly word that to catch instances that could bend the guidelines, that's the challenge. Would love some thoughts on that. Kepler's replied with his point of view, because he's been a very staunch supporter of canon accuracy. And he says, obviously you need to regulate the metru length socket connections for the upper legs with matching metru thigh plates. They need to have Hagah forearms and metru Hagah shoulders, Hagah feet. I think the idea is clear here. And I'm going to assume he's being serious. So I'm going to treat it as fair value. If you were being sarcastic, I apologize for missing it. I'm going to assume you're serious. I don't know if I fully agree that it has to be that specific. Like, I don't know about you, Eljay. But personally, when we start to get into mandating the type of feet, or mandating the forearms, or mandating, the length of the limbs.
Yeah, I feel like at that point you're no longer really just having a mock contest. You're ending up with maybe 4 options that you get. It's a Mass Effect 3 ending. Like, you have all of these avenues that you can take to end up at the same end.
Like, that's funny. That's a point where I actually would start to agree with the people talking about restrictions being too much, because that, I think, is a step too far. But I see why that would be said, because that is what is being proposed. That's the Hagah as they stand right now. If you look at Iruni and Norik, they both do use the same feet. They both do use the same upper legs. They both do have the same length upper legs. They both do have the same forearms. That is all true, and I do not disagree with any of that. But again, if you look at the Mata as an example, I don't know if that is necessarily law that they must all follow that design, because two of the Mata share the same design. That does not mean that all of them do, obviously. In fact, there's 3 different pairs that are kind of more similar to each other than not, Who's to say the same couldn't be true for the Hagah? Maybe Iruni and Norik are just the ones that look most alike each other, and then Bamonga and Qualis look the most like each other, and Pooks and Gaki look the most like each other. Just throwing it out there. Probably not those exact pairs, but you get my point. I'm not saying that is the case, just that it could be. And there's really nothing we've heard from Greg to say that that's not the case. Exactly, like Willis says in the chat, patron chat, if you just had Tahu and Liwa, you would say they all had asymmetrical arms, they all have a Mata hand, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Purely subjective. I fully acknowledge people might disagree. I don't want to be that limited. Yeah. If we were going to actually be that limited and mandate pieces all the way from the torso to the feet, I would actually just advocate doing an art contest.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
But just wanted to address that because that's not the only instance of that I've seen either. I've seen, I know Hazash was also in favor of a similar thing. Like, he was also talking with Kepler's later on. What?
It's too much for too little.
Essentially, yeah. Hazash was having a discussion with Kepler's, and Hazash was essentially saying he wants to make sure we get a cohesive team. And, him and Kepler's go back and forth, and Hazash is like, I'll openly admit I'm probably more concerned with orderliness and uniformity than the average fan. For that reason, decently cohesive probably isn't going to cut it for me personally. What I don't want for certain are things along the lines of 4 of the 6 have different masks, spearheads, or chest pieces, and 2 of them end up sharing one. 4 of them have gold armor, 1 of them has silver, and 1 has chrome blue. 5 of them has Hagah shields, and 1 has a Visorak shell. And I think some of that we can address, because I think one of the limitations you wanted to put in was that they must all have the same shield, because I think that's canon, right?
Yeah.
We know that's the case, yeah. So at least that one has you're good on. They would all have the Hagah shields. As far as 4 of them having gold armor, 1 of them has silver, and 1 has chrome blue, I presume what you're implying is you would rather they all have silver and gold, since we already have a silver precedent. Ideally, yes. I will admit, in a perfect world, I feel like they should adopt a format like, I can't believe I'm using this example, like the Toa Masters, where 3 of them have gold and 3 of them have silver.
I think that can be
that
extended.
Would be the way to go.
Personally, I believe that can be extended a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing all 6 independent, but that's just
that would also be cool.
That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with either, really. And they go, they keep going back and forth like that, just about that notion. And there is generally a belief from people that there should be some more additional restrictions, but I don't know how far I agree. We've obviously said what we don't want. Some things that I have seen thrown around are a recommendation of some kind of metallic color. Here we go. I found the other post from Hazash. If we had to have a Hagah contest, my ideal outcome would be just his idea: equal distribution of metallic colors across the team, e.g. 2 pairs of 3 colors, 3 of 3, 1 of 6, etc. Equal or near equal distribution of leg types, equal distribution of shoulder armor types, equal or near distribution of eye colors, equal or near equal distribution of anything that can be varied, feet, thigh armor, etc. Metallic colors in the same places, thighs, feet, shoulders, etc. Different chest armor for each, or equal distribution. different mask for each or equal distribution. Here's a good point he mentions that hasn't even been discussed yet. I can forgive Metru build modifications if an art contest rectifies them. That's an interesting point. Standard Ratuka shields on all. Or a single one of the Vizirac shells for 3 of them. I don't know why he's thinking about Vizirac shells. We're not having Vizirac shells as shields.
I think I could see it as long as the art fixes it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't know about metallic colors. Because here's the thing. The Hagah conceivably could be from all different places, right? That's kind of the point. They're put on a team, but they're not necessarily from the same place or from the same group. Do we know that?
no, so they're all from different places.
Yeah. So we have Greg's saying that they are Metru-styled builds. That's it. I understand the conceit of wanting a Toa team to have cohesion, and I do agree with it. However, there is nothing canonically saying that they have to have an equal distribution of anything. Colors, armor, or whatever. They could all be different. One of them could have a CCBS shell. Not saying they will, but they could. Gaki could be the smooth armored Toa. It could be a thing. We don't know. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, just to kind of set expectations for the Hagah. Enforcement of near equal distribution of pieces, I do not feel is an achievable thing, because we can't enforce that in any reasonable capacity, because everyone will be allowed to enter either all of them or as low as one of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Can't really do that. Okay, I've got about 2 more, and then we are done with this. This was just a post from Student Scissors I wanted to read. This was in response to my question, because I was essentially advocating for the free-for-all, and I was like, talking about honesty and stuff, and the idea of just leaving it to the voters. And I was asking, that's all well and good, but I have to ask the question, do the voters respect that this is a canon contest first and a build contest second? And Student Scissors just agrees, and he's like, this is why I think we need a Metru build rule. I know so many people who just want the Hagah to get canonized so they can have official representations on their shelves with Norik and Aruni, and if the canon appearance looks nothing like those two, it kind of defeats the purpose entirely. Now, you may say that's silly if you just want a basic Metru build, make your own, and you don't need a contest. To an extent, I'd agree, but that's not what's in question. This is a Hagah Canon contest, and people want their canon Hagah to actually fit in on a shelf. I totally get wanting creative freedom, but this round just isn't the place for it. I think that's a very succinct way of putting it, basically, because just like we've been saying, this is not the contest for it. People are viewing these as limitations. It's not a limitation. It's a theme. The theme is a Metru build. I'm stealing that from you, Eljay. I've stolen that phrasing because it's very good. It is a theme. It is a themed build. There have been many before. There'll be many more. It's totally doable. And then finally, Germinator made a post about the free-for-all. And he had some questions. He was like, here's a question I just thought of. For the idea of a free-for-all followed by a group shot, what would be the canonicity of the first round winners? For the last 2 contests, the rule's been the winning mocks are non-canon because of the possibility of 3D printed parts. Obviously, any first round art winners wouldn't have the possibility of this problem, while any mock winners would. So would all of the first round winners be considered non-canon because there's a possibility that they could be a mock with a 3D printed piece? If so, I think that could help even out the perceived disadvantages that mocks are at in this method. I guess what he's implying is art would have an advantage because they could be considered more canon. But if we make a blanket rule saying that none of the first round winners are, that could alleviate that, maybe, I think is what he's getting at.
Potentially. So, first round, anything falls into the mock category of placement. essentially.
Yeah.
So they get dropped down to the bottom of the page. And it's the final image that gets sent to Greg for canonization purposes. That's
Yeah,
that's
it
how
would
that.
essentially be a cropped version. Like, so assume it's a group shot, right? It would be a cropped version of each character from the group shot that would be on the Hagah featured page.
Mhm.
You know, so
Yeah.
to answer your question, really, the answer is yes. I don't personally like using the words, non-canon, because if I had my way, it wouldn't even be a distinction, But the way it is, the featured image on the page, the one that is recognized, like Elj said, will be the group shot if we go that route.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to worry about that. He was the one who brought up the point about sculptures. I knew somebody did. He was like, the more I think about it in the context of the combo contest, all mocks should be thought of as sculptures rather than mocks. And kind of, yeah. His question was specifically asking, could an extremely non-purist, more than 4 3D printed parts, cut, glued pieces, etc., mock enter as art in the form of a sculpture? So I get why he's asking that. My gut says no. Pragmatically, though, might be something worth thinking about because functionally there isn't much of a difference. Since there wouldn't be like a category shift, maybe there could be allowances made. I'm not promising that though. Still have to talk about it. But I get why that's a question worth asking, because he points out that art doesn't have any purism rules, and there's no medium restriction to art. And in the case of a free for all, that point would go away. So we'll think on that one. But props for bringing that to attention.
I'm sorry. Run it by me one more time.
TLDR, say you enter an extremely non-purist mock.
Mm-hmm.
Whole 9 yards. Spray paint, cut glued pieces, a bunch of 3D printed parts. Could it be entered as art and not a mock in the free for all? Because there's no category restriction.
No, that's a mock.
That's a mock.
Yeah. We actually have distinctly, because we have rules against that.
I think that's what he's
like we in lieu of I will address specifically the cut and spray painted pieces. Rules on non-purism: cut pieces and cut stickers are not allowed. Glued pieces and glued stickers are not allowed. Non-Lego cloth, rubber bands, stickers, and strings are not allowed. Third-party or bootleg pieces not identical in mold to Lego pieces, i.e. Mega Blocks, bootleg construction pieces are not allowed, etc., etc. So distinctly, by using Lego pieces, that falls under a mock category.
Okay.
It would be
because he's broaching it from the perspective of, if we do the free for all, the need for that kind of goes out the window.
No, because you still have mocks and you still have art.
I guess, but I do get the point of view that if they're all in the same boat.
I get the point. I understand.
Because our concern about mocks was reproducibility.
I understand.
We didn't want cut pieces.
No, it isn't reproducibility. It's scarcity. We don't want to create a situation in which a winning entry exists that people would thereby... We don't want to endorse damaging parts that are no longer in production. That's the point.
That makes sense.
So we're not going to encourage people to destroy their pieces. Additionally, don't get me wrong, while the focus gets switched, like, you still have mocks, you still have art. Like, those are still two separate things. They do not immediately become one because we're no longer having brackets. So, yeah, that's about it.
Fair enough. All right. As the finale to this section, I want to address something that was sent to us by Keeney, by message board user Gid. I think it was in the topic. His perspective is, my suggestion is to define what a Toa Hagah is, rather than a Metru build. Set the definition in stone, and then run the contest as normal with possibly a group art contest at the very end. For instance, a model acceptable for submission into the Toa Hagah Canon contest must consist of and no less than a base color identical to that of the Hagah set it's based on, shoulder and chest armor identical to the color of its mask or to itself if no mask is included. Something I forgot about with the Hagah. Proportions and scale within reasonable approximation to that of the existing Toa Hagah sets. Any entry that fails to meet these qualifications cannot be considered a Toa Hagah. This is purely a hypothetical rule set, but I think this discussion and decision needs to be had and reached before the one in this topic. Because if a Metru build is just a set, there's no reason outside of making people happy that we shouldn't just have a group art contest and nothing else. Well, I disagree with that point because of the prior discussions about the variety of Metru builds.
Okay.
But I do think the Hagah restrictions are interesting.
Where's this post? I can't find this post.
It's in Circe Business.
Yeah,
that was just where Keeney sent it.
Okay. So here's the thing. Figure out what a Toa Hagah is. Okay, step 1, Metru build. And we're back to the start. Like, this point kicks the can down the road. It isn't actually doing anything to address what people are really concerned about, which is the literal core of the physicality of these characters. Like, I get the idea, and it's a nice idea. Figure everything else first. But you're not actually solving the problem. You're just delaying the solution, or finding a solution, in my opinion. Like, it's good to figure it's good to figure everything out. That's perfectly fine, but it's not. It doesn't have any immediacy.
What I found interesting about it was that his point addresses some things I hadn't considered and that I haven't seen other people consider, namely the shoulder and chest armor being identical to the color of the mask. Which I repeat, nothing from Greg says that has to be the case. But it is something that the Hagah do share that is unique to them.
What?
It could potentially be. So, like, if the character has a gold mask, their metallic color also has to be gold.
Oh, yeah, no. The all metallic colors on a character will need to remain consistent in that metallic color.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I mean...
That's definitely one thing.
And I mean, that's all good and well and fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't address the greatest issue.
I mean, the thing with the post, what you're really getting at is you're implying that the Hagah and the Metru builds are two different things. But one of the things that you say, talking about the height and the scale and the proportions being reasonable approximation to that of the existing Toa Hagah sets.
Intrinsic to a Metru build.
It's intrinsic to a Metru build. Like, we've already discussed that point. Now, I get why you're making a distinction because the Hagah have longer forearms than the Metru. But once again, as we've proven with the Mata and the discussions, that doesn't necessarily have to be the only forearms they use. I like your wording, reasonable approximation. It might end up using that, but again, it has to be talked about in constraints of the Metru. Because for all intents and purposes, there's really nothing special about the Hagah except their metallic colors. They're from all areas. They're not part of the same unit. They're just a bunch of Toa brought together that wear metallic colors and have a spear and shield. So theoretically, there's really no rule saying that they have to have any kind of similar scale or proportions to Norik and Aruni, ... except, like you say, within reasonable approximation, which to me is code for no 20-foot tall poogs.
Now, a 20-foot tall Bumanga isn't out of the question.
Yeah, that's fine. Not poog.
I'm screwing around, everyone. I'm kidding. No, don't.
Tall
No. Ignore him. No, we're not trying to gun for a Bumanga that is using his mask at that time. No, it's not happening.
So it all rolls into the same grouping. It all has to be figured out.
Yeah,
but that's pretty much all the feedback that really I want to address here and now. That is by no means all the feedback. I read maybe 20 posts. There's 606.
Yeah.
So people are still posting, and there's plenty of stuff that we will be discussing in future. like Keeney was able to last night. He was like, okay, people have talked about the Metru builds enough, so let's like pivot it, talking about other things and stuff. And a lot of people have posted a lot of really good things. Like Winger made a really good write-up, which we've read, at least I've read. We're going to discuss it internally over the next few months. Keeney's been aggregating a lot of very good feedback about like rules and stuff. What I want to see more people talk about, and usually I never invite criticism of us, but like obviously who likes being criticized, but please criticize us now. If you're one of the people who over the last 2 contests had issues about rules, or you had issues about how things were handled, or you had ideas for how things could change, I can't promise we'll change them, but I'd much rather hear them now in the early brainstorming phase than after the rules have been published and when we're mid-contest. So please, if you like had umbrage with anything we did, say it now. It doesn't have to be just about Metru builds. This topic is the place for any and all feedback. If you want to dump it, now's the time, and we'll be mulling it over and reading it, and we may even do a second episode. Who knows? Addressing all this stuff, and we're going to keep applying in the topic. So please keep it coming. It is appreciated. Elj, do you have anything else you want to add on the existing topics thus far?
I'm trying to think about it. It's, nothing's necessarily coming to mind. That one last point was really the main one that I wanted to address. The last one. Yeah, there are a couple of things people are asking about ad nauseum. Like, are shields going to be made mandatory?
Yes.
I mean, not necessarily. In the artwork, absolutely.
So?
In the mocks, not necessarily. So
that's a good point.
I won't say necessarily. I mean, you guys are just slightly jumping the gun with those. There was one other question that people kept on asking about. Oh, yes. In the group shot, will Norik and Aruni be made mandatory? I'm going with no. They will be heavily encouraged, but they will not be mandatory. Personally,
I would like for them to be, but I don't feel they should be. Like, it's not fair to make people draw an additional 2 characters other than what the point is. It's basically superfluous. Obviously, I would like to have all the Hagah in one shot. I just don't necessarily want to force people to do it to enter. Because that's not the point. You know, you're spending time drawing additional characters that aren't what's being decided. Imagine if someone like runs out of time because they can't finish the last character that isn't even needed. I can already predict the complaining. Like, oh, I ran out of time and couldn't finish the 6th character, and it was Norik. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to deal with that.
I would not enforce it. Real quick, Gavin Hendricks in the YouTube live chat asks, the thick Aruni needs addressing. We already did. Addressed it earlier this podcast, but we've addressed it previously anyway in our rules. Rule 11. We reserve the right to disqualify at any time any entry that we have reason to believe has been entered in bad faith or in an attempt to disrupt the voting process, or any entry that we have reason to believe may disrupt the voting process.
Yeah. Now, just to specifically clarify, we use that very sparingly.
Mm-hmm.
There are, like, people are making fun, like, oh, it's thick Aruni, he has, like, chonky upper legs. Like, sometimes, like, some Bionicle characters do have chonky limbs, and they're, like, buff. Like, there's nothing that specifically says it couldn't be done. It's very easy for us to tell when something's done to meme and when it's not. You know? We're not dumb. We can tell. So our rulings on individual matters will always be handled on a case-by-case basis. But we reserve the right to do anything if we feel it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
That is why that exists. I did forget, I was sent something by Dag, who was the creator of the Vakama build before this podcast, and he has an interesting idea. Says, you told me in the topic, from what I understand, that you would like that you would like to have custom builds be allowed, but are concerned on how to regulate it with the rules, which is true. That's kind of what I was getting at earlier. In a perfect world, I'd love it, but it's hard to say, okay, one person did it well, 10 other people don't do it well, then we have to disqualify 10 entries and we look like the bad guys, basically. But Dag's idea is one I initially thought was a little ridiculous, but is kind of good when you think about it. Why not set boundary dimensions on the size of the torso used? Basically, any custom torso cannot be wider than 5 studs or thicker than 4, but height can vary within reason. My build proves these limitations are doable for those that choose to go with custom. And his measurement is Technic beams. So you literally just have a Technic beam and be like, okay, this custom torso is Metru dimensions. And that's easily modifiable. He says, simply introduce an addendum to the breakdown image rule to require pictures of the torso compared to a Technic beam. Because if a Marcus is going to do a custom torso, they probably have a Technic beam.
Yeah, and if a Marcus is going to do a custom torso, they probably have a Metru torso.
I mean, you're right.
Like, it's so much work and so much effort and so much modification so you don't use 2 pieces as opposed to 86. Like, I really don't mean to be rude, but I don't understand. I just don't get it.
I mean,
Why?
look, I respect Dag because he's not trying to be a rabble rouser.
Oh no, I just that's why I feel bad about being rude about it, because I'm not trying to discourage his creativity. It's
but
just
I agree with you. I don't get it either.
I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not.
But it's because we're not hardcore Machists. We're looking at this from a different lens. It's just more work than it's worth, like logistically. I'm not 100% saying we won't, because that is a good idea. I think if we were to consider it, your way would have to be how it would be done, because requiring a breakdown image with a Technic beam is about the only way you could measure that. And that is a way to objectively measure it without us having to be the one to look at it and kind of eyeball. And then people would get on our case for having to subjectively, disqualify stuff. It's a good idea. I still just don't know if it's worth opening up that can of worms, because I guarantee someone eventually would try to push the boundaries on what would be allowed. But we'll definitely think about it. It's a good proposition, and thank you for being constructive in the topic and not picking fights with people like certain other.
It is genuinely appreciated, and I don't mean to demean what you're trying to propose here. Like, you're doing great. You're doing fine. It's just I'm addressing the concept itself. So
our job is to get these running smoothly, and it seems like some stuff is just more trouble than it's pragmatically worth.
Get them running smoothly and get them running. Thank you for saying that, because there's one other thing I wanted to address. One other thing.
Sure. I just remembered something too. I'll go after you.
It's the people trying to end these contests again. They're like,
yes.
They're like 3 people that are saying, we want the contest to end. We want the contest. Let us have a vote for the contest to end again. Maybe one day. Maybe eventually. Like, just. This is truly an instance of give people an inch, they'll take a mile. Genuinely. Because, we did the first poll, and it was overwhelmingly in support of the contests happening. Someone made their own poll, which we can't properly vet ourselves. I think it might be public. Might be public, I'm not sure. And in which case we can. But it's not one of ours. So it's not like a proper official poll. But someone made it. And guess what? overwhelmingly in support of the contests, A, being fun, B, being good, and C, wanting more of them.
Yeah.
And it seems like if we give you another poll and it's overwhelmingly in support of the contest continuing, are you gonna stop, or are you gonna be like, well, maybe we need another one?
It's just an ever evolving, like, it just keeps going. Like, yes, the contests are not perfect, they're riddled with difficulties, but it is clear that people do still want them. The interest is still there. Now, like Eljay said, I'm not saying we'll never do a poll. We probably will at some point. And honestly, even us, I don't think, we're honest with you guys. I don't have a problem saying publicly that I've thought about stopping them myself at times. Somewhat recently, I've given some thought to the prospect because they're stressful. They're very stressful. A topic's been up for 24 hours and there's 600 posts and people fighting with each other. I had to delete a post because someone spammed. Well, I didn't delete the post. I think you did, because they spammed 30 curse words. People get heated in these topics, man. People get heated. Usually it's directed at us.
There's no good reason. There's no good reason whatsoever. There's no good excuse. None.
There's no good reason to do it. It just causes stress, but I'll be the first one to admit they're a source of stress. And I've thought about stopping them, and there might come a time where they stop, but I still believe that ultimately they lead to a good product. I think they fill a gap that is there in the Bionicle community. I think they fill a gap that's there when it comes to Greg's involvement in the Bionicle community. I think there's a need for something like them, and we're the only people who have the platform, the setup, the system, the wherewithal, the experience to do them, except for BZP, who did them before a few times. A poll, it's we're the only people who have the system in place. We're the only people who have Greg on their site. They're kind of our responsibility, so long as they exist. But I'm not saying they'll last forever. We probably will do a poll at one point, not now. We're doing the Hagah contest. We're not going to stop doing them midway through because people are being annoying in the topics,
Yeah.
If we quit that easily, we would have stopped at hose race.
Yeah. No, that's about it. It's just stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
We'll host. We will consider hosting a poll at a later time once we've had more contests to show how they properly work. And but there is not a great push for it. It is not a popular stance. I'm not entertaining it at this time. So
the one other thing I forgot about was something that came about as a conversation I was having with Steve the Squid on the topic. He didn't say this, but the conversation was basically he was advocating for fewer restrictions, and he was like, just let people do what they want. When you do the thing with restrictions, you're trying to kind of please everybody. You're trying to compromise. You're trying to stop people being annoying. People are always going to be annoying. You can't let it get to you. One of the points he made that I really liked was, do you really think TTV is going to get canceled for DQing a 2-foot-tall Titan Pooks? And before you even get to that point, do you really think that you can't make a rule set that would ban a 2-foot-tall Mach? I like your point about how people are going to complain either way, which is why I'm advocating for you to focus on the primary goal of the contest, to canonize the best possible version of the character. People are going to complain. Don't let their complaints get in the way of the best. It's all well and good to promote community engagement by jumping into the monkey exhibit once in a while, but when people are complaining unreasonably, you aren't obligated to entertain them. The best way to deal with a tantrum is to ignore it. And I respect that POV. And I thank you for sharing it. He's another person who's a constructive voice, even if I don't agree with all the points that are being made. I do feel the need for some restrictions. But going back and forth with him did kind of make me think and remember that ultimately, at the end of the day, Greg still does have veto power over all this. And if something we need to remember, and the community needs to remember as well, in all the panic, if a fringe case ever gets through something that is just way too extreme, Greg would probably veto it. Like if Hoserix had made it through and been presented to Greg as the only winner, because we did present it to Greg as promised, but like that he would have vetoed that. I'm 99% sure of it.
Oh yeah.
Greg is a man with eyes and common sense. And a lot of the times we as the community we make mountains out of molehills when they really don't exist. So I get the perspective of just allow creative freedom. If something deviates too much from what his idea of the Hagah should look like, just let him veto it. But the reason I don't think that holds up is because it's been 14 years since he made that post saying they were Metru style builds. I do not purport to speak for Greg, but I almost guarantee you he probably wouldn't go meticulously study the Hagah and look at the color blocking of metallic colors to make sure that the metallic color blocking on any of these that win would be equivalent to Noric and Aruni before approving them. He'd probably just approve them unless there was something glaring.
Mm-hmm.
That's my guess. So in a way, like it's not Greg's responsibility. He's the author, but we're the people running the contests. So we have to come up with a rule set that people can actually follow to ensure things run smoothly. Otherwise, say Greg does veto a mock. He has that power, but it's not ideal because then we just wasted weeks of people's time. All for something that isn't going to be made canon because we slacked off and didn't do our part. It's a give and take.
Yeah.
But that's all I have to say. That was my actual last point. I had nothing else more to say.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much satisfied for the time being. Just behave yourselves, people. Like, it's not that difficult. It genuinely is not hard at all. And you make things a lot easier for us.
I agree.
Like,
I agree completely.
Just relax. Just
the vast
relax.
Majority of people have been good, but there have definitely been some outliers. Please chill. We've more than covered enough questions, so I'm gonna say 3 Q&A questions, preferably about this topic. We'll do 4. We'll do 2 from YouTube and 2 from Discord. So go now if anybody has any questions. We'll answer them and then end the show.
Yes.
How you doing, Elch?
I'm doing. How's it going?
I'm tired.
Thought you were a Meso.
I also am that. Yes, this is accurate. First one is Mr. Domi890. Why do the Hagah masks do not like their original masks? I think he's asking why don't they look like their originals. What's the deal with the Hagah masks? What makes them special?
Oh, wait. Why does the Hagah masks do not... What?
Like their appearance. Didn't you mention something about like how their masks have different appearances than what their powers are?
Oh yeah, so the Toa Hagah masks, their masks and armor were given to them by the Brotherhood of Makuta when they were asked or hired or what have you to be their guards. The masks are honoring past heroes. And as such, the mask shape does not match the power it actually has, like a normal mask would. Like a Miru looks like a Miru, and it acts like a Miru. But, for instance, Toa Noric, he has a Pekui, a mask of great diminishment. His Pekui, however, is in the shape of a noble krill. We do not actually know what a normal Pekui looks like at all. So the one exception, not the rule, the exception is Iruni. Iruni's... Oh gosh, what's the name of it? totally. I'm spacing so hard on the name of Aruni's mask. There we go. Qualsi. His Qualsi is in the shape of a Qualsi. That's it. So he is an exception. So that's the deal.
Fair enough. Then we'll do comment from YouTube. Toa of Snow. Could the final team artwork potentially be more lenient than prior contests with changing stuff for the sake of consistency? Imagine ending up with 2 identical masks among the winners or similar. So I guess what he's referring to is our rules that things can't deviate too much. And he's assuming that... But wait, what do you mean 2 identical masks?
So what if you had a Gaaki from one person and a Bumanga from another person both have, say, a How?
Well, in the first phase, that would get changed anyway, right?
No, what if they are, like, imagine, what if they're both mocks, they both won, they both had Hows, and then we move on to the group art contest. Would artists be allowed to change one or both of those masks?
Well, yes, I would imagine, because that's how we've done it in the prior ones, too.
I feel that masks are going to require some further deliberation. I'm of the opinion that we should limit masks to ones we have already seen. Personally, since they're supposed to be honoring past heroes, I feel like it's easy enough to just pick from the pool. I understand that not everyone would necessarily be content with that, so I'm not going to die on that hill, but that is my opinion on that matter.
That's an interesting point. I forgot that was a thing. They were to honor past heroes.
At which point, artists would be given the option to either retain the one that the mockist used or change it once to a different mask.
Yeah.
That would be how I would go about it. But I understand that isn't necessarily feasible.
We'll definitely have to get additional feedback on that, because I can see how that would be a complex point. I hadn't even really given that much thought, TBH.
Yeah. Now, granted, we will release a list of masks that would not be permissible. I want to do that. So, like, Kanohi Agnika, the Vahi, Mask Creation, and essentially any mask worn by a Makuta or deemed immoral. I would just immediately disallow those.
That's fair.
For final entry. Just right out the gate. There's no reason a Toa should be wearing any of those. Same for Kanohi Nuva. Gone. Olisi, no. Avoki, no. Stuff like that. This is a lengthy conversation that was had a few months ago, and I did not hear a good opinion that changed my mind. So.
This isn't a question, but it's a funny comment. So I'm reading it from Sharnak. I missed 90% of the show. Please summarize everything in 20 words or less.
Okay. All right. I can do this. People mad. They shouldn't be. Hagah, Metro builds. Some other things. Read the rules. Done.
Thank you for joining us, Sharnak. You're a legend. Thank you, LJ. LJ's recap podcast. Second question from patron chat is from Willis. Is there an option for just one contest for a group shot drawing?
I guess.
Not really. I mean, theoretically, I haven't really heard many people express that.
Yeah,
that would definitely be the simplest path. I don't argue with that. That would be like, boom, you're done. Over, like, fewest amount of things to worry about. But that would I can already see the complaints. Oh, I prefer this mock to this. I prefer this character to this character, but I can't vote on them separately because they're grouped together. Woe is me. Why can't I vote for them separately? So, if it was art only, it would probably be separate. for the sake of avoiding that complaint.
Yeah.
And then the last question in the YouTube chat. What? I don't get this one. Toby asks, could we draw a bootleg mask in the art contest?
Like some of the masks from the bootleg sets. And I'm pretty sure the answer to that is no.
I mean, we have no rules against their designs, to my knowledge.
We do state third party or bootleg pieces not identical in molded Lego pieces are not allowed in the mocking portion.
I get why he's asking. I guess that is a bit of an edge case.
I would not advise it at this stage. Don't put all your coins in that piggy bank right now.
Put it to you this way. Think about it like this. Completely independent of what LJ or I would want. We have to contort a rule set because of someone who does not like the idea of 3D printed pieces made by the community being represented on an officially Lego sanctioned wiki. So how do you think it would go if bootleg third-party pieces made by competitors have their illustrations featured on an officially sanctioned Lego wiki? I can imagine that probably wouldn't go over too well, completely independent of whether LJ and I were fine with it.
Yeah.
Just theorizing, though. Yeah. Well, they already asked about the mask. You already mentioned you're going to do some mask regulations. Why even have the shield? Because they have shields. Duh. Oh, final one. LJ and Meso, when is the canon contest for Hukimari and Anika to be properly colored? Next week. We're starting it next week.
Yeah, we actually finally got in contact with Christian Faber, and he's ready to properly endorse that for 14B 2021.
That feel when we're almost at the 2-year anniversary of 14B 2020.
Hey, and Biocraft Chronicles.
Yeah, that's true.
You should watch that.
We should. All right, that's all I got. That's all I got on this matter for now.
Yeah, I'm pretty much all good.
We only really talked about a microcosm of things and came to no conclusions on any of them, so I don't predict this will be the last time we'll discuss this matter publicly. Definitely not the last time privately. Just keep the feedback coming, please. It is appreciated. Yeah. That's basically it.
I'm pretty much all done.
All right. Hit us with the closing plugs.
All right. So if you're interested in joining in the conversation, head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. You need to be 13 years or older and read our rules, and you'll have a good time. Then head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/ttvchannel. Low as $1 a month. You can become a part of the chat, as well as our Minecraft server on the island of Motunui and Voyanui. Additionally, head on over to Twitter at the TTV channel, at Messinac, and at the LJ Johnson, JOHNSEN. That's everything.
Alrighty. Well, that's basically all. I want to thank you all once again for listening to Nack and Jay. It was greatly appreciated. And we will see you all next time for another exciting episode. So with that being said, I am Meso.
I'm LJ.
And streaming to you from a golden beach, this was Nack and Jay.